faulty technology, blown transmission, failing hybrid system are all just some of the problems you'll find in modern day vehicles. But JD Power puts together a list of the highest quality vehicles and least likely to fail. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. The first vehicle, we're talking about Genesis as a brand. Genesis being an upscale luxury brand of Hyundai, Kia, and of course they're bringing new technology. They've got great new headlights, beautiful new grille. They even look a bit like a Bentley with the front wings. A lot of people mistake them for that. They have a lot of great technology, gorgeous sight lines throughout. I definitely love this sleek look here, and you've got lots of glass on top, fastback on the back. Here the GV70. Now, as far as Hyundai, Kia go, they've had their share of issues, but it appears these days that Genesis has had a lot better luck and success with durability and reliability challenges, and they're clearly creating something now that's more appetizing, more reliable, and more agreeable to the consumer. You get all-wheel drive, 2.5T in this particular unit, great exhaust tips that aren't the fake ones like you're getting in a lot of Audis these days, and it's just an overall nice, very pleasing looking design, especially at a time when all SUVs are starting to really look the same. This one feels a little more upscale. Actually, they've really stretched with the design on this without going too outside the window. A rating of 183 failures out of 100 vehicles puts us at the top 10 for sure of all manufacturers right now based on JD Power's results. Now, I'm personally not exactly sure how this one made the list, but there it is. Buick, it's another extension of a General Motors product. Of course, this is the Encore, and it looks almost like a clown car, but these vehicles here, there's been no shortage of problems with transmissions, and Buicks have had a lot of transmission issues. Heads-up display in some of the models that are equipped, rust features, brake problems, all kinds of technology-related issues. But ultimately, when you're dealing with transmission issues, all kinds of electrics, and that's straight out of the box, that does not inspire confidence. But at 183 problems out of 100 vehicles, the initial quality appears to be there. I'm just not sure how long this will last. Outside of warranty, 3, 4, 5 years before this vehicle is scrapped? Your guess is as good as mine. Now, the older Kias used to be a problem. They used to blow up with their Theta 2 engines, burn roadside, catastrophic engine failures. And many of the older generation Fortes were problematic with burning engines, as were many of the Kia Souls like this. The older generations had problems with some of the Theta 2 engines, but things have been changing. Now you get into some of the newer generation vehicles, and the overall initial durability seems to be quite durable. And most people these days are really enjoying their Kias. Here's a K4, definitely a sporty looking four-door car, and it has a bit of a unique look with snap together hubcaps on there. A very basic looking car, simpleton little handles, no sunroof on the top, and it has all of the great tech you could possibly imagine, including a nicely dressed up interior, which is on par with the Civics and the Camrys. But the newest generation of the Kias seems to be much better. At 181 problems per 100 vehicles, it puts it right smack dab in the middle of its peers and actually on the top list of some of the most reliable vehicles, at least based on initial response and initial ownership. Now, the Theta 2's gone. Things have gotten a lot better, as well as a lot of their electrified vehicles are getting much better, and some of their technology is much improved over some of their peers. Not everybody wants to drive a Tesla. For some of their EVs, there's certainly other vehicles to choose from. Internal combustion engines a little better, and overall Kia seems to be a much better, well sorted out vehicle in the modern day cars and SUVs. The next one here is Dodge. With 180 problems per 100 vehicles, puts it actually in the upper echelon. And believe it or not, as part of Stellantis, it's a little surprising. Dodge doesn't have a lot. They've got the Hornet, which is essentially an Alfa Romeo Tonale. They have this, the Durango, in different formats and different engines, and of course they have the electrified version of the Charger and Challenger. Now, these vehicles here have been around a long time. I even owned one years ago, and they are great vehicles overall. This one here is pretty in the Nardo gray, and clearly it's still a popular vehicle, but it is getting a little obsolete, and many would argue that Stellantis, as part of the product lines of Dodge, Ram, Jeep, Chrysler, are getting a little stale. They're getting a little outdated, and the products have been around a long time, and it's time for some innovation. Of course, some of the updates in the ZF automatic transmissions have helped. Some of the engines have been pretty robust in some of the Dodge products, and really the weaknesses are more on the electrics, but they still happen to make some of the most reliable initial quality results based on JD Powers. Who knew? Now, here's one that should have been a little higher up the list than it is. Honda's always traditionally had a great reputation for durability, but according to JD Powers and Associates, they've sort of dropped down the ranks a little bit, and a lot of that had to do with the engine that's under the hood of this particular vehicle. I mean, other than the fact that there's been transmission related issues, the V6, the 3.5 liter V6 is one of the last naturally aspirated that you'll find anywhere. You'll find it in the Ridgeline, you'll find it in the Pilot, you'll find it in the Odyssey. These vehicles, they're great, they're a great engine, but unfortunately there has been some recalls, there's been some problems with problematic engines blowing bearing. These have that 3.5 liter V6 that in some cases, certain batch number sizes has actually unfortunately led to an early engine demise. Now, there's recalls for some steering issues with certain Hondas. There's also issues with the 1.5 liter turbo 4s with some of the smaller cars like the CRVs and the Civics, oil and fuel dilution issues. And generally the overall quality and durability, even with the CVT, has slid down the rabbit hole, down to now where Honda's at 179 per 100 vehicles. Now, Honda is generally still considered a very reliable brand, but JD Powers does give it an initial quality rating a little lower than many would expect. Now, it's interesting, with vehicles like the Chevy Equinox like this have never been known for high levels of reliability, and neither has Chevy with the Colorado like this, and even more so the Chevy Silverado. So the light trucks with the 5.3 liter as well as the 6.2 liter V8s have had more than their share of issues. We've heard about the L87, the V8, that's had catastrophic failures, bearing issues, crankshaft issues, and that's been a major problem. With the 6.2 liter V8 that you're seeing under the hood, they've had more than their share of problems, and yet Chevy ranks at 178 problems per 100 vehicles, puts it well ahead of a lot of its peers in the same space. Of course, the Z71, this is a fun truck. They're great looking units. They make a lot of great technology. They're even stepping into the EV space, and openly had admitted that they're probably going to put a little more money into EVs and a little less in the hydrogen sector. It's much, much better than the vast majority of a lot of its competition. And we know that a lot of people trust them. There's a lot of loyalists. They'll love the brand, but unfortunately, all of its competition is struggling right now. Even the likes of Toyota. These older generations were ultra reliable with the V6, but now they've thrown in a turbo 4. But even more importantly, their new 3.4 liter turbo V6 has been nothing short of problematic to the extreme. So Toyota doesn't even compete right now in the same space. So regardless of the 6.2 or the 5.3 lifter issues or the cylinder deactivation or carbon fouling problems or the fact that their smaller diesel engine needs to come out for a belt change, people are buying them. And the reliability is holding fairly sturdy according to JD Power initial quality survey results. And the next one is Jaguar. This is an E-Pace. 175 problems out of 100 vehicles actually ranks it a lot better than your average. You know, the E-Pace like this, the F-Pace was actually fairly reliable. And even my F-Type that I had a few years ago, I never had any problems other than expensive maintenance, but it didn't break down unnecessarily. The E-Pace like this, the F-Paces are actually very durable. They're reliable. They're fun to drive. Sure, there's one-off little issues, and a lot of it's the infotainment system. Of course, you had to get a SIM card updated because a lot of times the navigation just didn't work properly. But ultimately, my overall experience with Jaguar was actually quite reliable, and I never really had any big issues, and that's confirmed by JD Powers, who also claims that they're one of the very best in terms of initial quality reports. The next one goes to Hyundai. Now, Hyundai has had more than their share of problems with the Theta 2 engines, GDI engines, direct injected, eating up rod bearings, and a lot of them had potentially burned roadside. I've seen 2.4s, 2 liter engines that have absolutely failed. They've also had ABS controller issues with the internal system leaking the brake fluid, and of course that's led to potential fires. But the latest generation, we're talking about 2025, and it matters because a lot of their electric vehicles like the Ioniq series are much more reliable than many of their competition. They're really innovating, and a lot of their technology is definitely starting to win. I mean, look at, they have these great bold headlights and very, very sizable bodywork, but ultimately it's the durability and the lack of failure modes that we're seeing in some of the newer versions of some of the Hyundais. The older stuff I wouldn't touch with a 100-foot pole, but some of the newer vehicles are much, much better. And as a result, JD Power also ranks them quite highly. To the tune of about 173 failures per 100 vehicles means that modern day Hyundais are vastly more reliable than you're finding in many, many other competition. Here's the next one right here, and I'd never thought I'd say this. It's actually closer to the top of the list for JD Power's initial quality responses. Of course, we're talking about Nissan, and of the mainstream brands, believe it or not, this actually gets the top list. Now, I'm not sure personally how that even happens when they have issues with the variable compression turbo engines, with those joints and wingles and dingles and potential failures. With the Jatco CVT transmissions have been a problem, as has some of the electrical issues. In the newer Pathfinders, things have gotten a lot better. And some of their bigger vehicles, including the Frontier and their trucks with the torque converter autos and NA engines, are still very, very reliable. It's really just some of their smaller vehicles that they're struggling with some of the reliability issues. And even with those, they've made some enhancements to help with the overall durability. But their full-size trucks like this, it's essentially on the same platform as the QX80, is nothing short of spectacular. Big V8 engine in the previous generation, the new one's a turbo 6 torque converter automatic transmission, and Nissan, believe it or not, has actually stepped up the game a little bit. Now, they're never going to be accused of being the most reliable for a long-term operation and ownership, but at least initial quality response by JD Power puts them at the very, very top of the list. Who can go wrong with a Lexus? A lot of these are very popular. The RX, the NX series of SUVs, they feature a lot of the best Toyota products. A lot of their V6 engines now transitioning to 2.4 turbos or NA 2.5 engines that couple up with a hybrid drive. All of their vehicles are ultra reliable, and they even come with the ECVT, which is vastly better than any of the CVTs in their competition. So Lexus does create a product that's one of the most reliable models and brands on the market today. Toyota, they're also one of the most popular, but for a luxury brand, you cannot go wrong. And of course, you get all of the great details, LEDs, sunroof on top, all kinds of nice fit and finish on these vehicles, and they're built to last a long, long time. Here's an F Sport, gives you nice detail. You get the LC style mirrors and all kinds of greatness. The Lexus NX is one of my favorite. The 450h Plus with the plug-in hybrid is definitely one that you need to try to get your hands on. It's reliable and it's peppy to drive. Not everybody loves the big grille in the front, but ultimately Lexus is the #1 spot. The most durable, the most long-lasting, and the best quality at 166 failures per 100 units is vastly the most reliable of almost every other one of their peers. But if you want to find some other great options for reliable vehicles, check out my videos there. They're really going to help you navigate that world, because it is a complex number of vehicles out there today, and you just want to make sure your money is well protected. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. See you then. Bye-bye.